My name is Imogen Warren. I'm 18 years old. At my own birthday dinner, in front of 32 relatives, my father stood up, raised his glass, and announced with a mocking laugh, "We drained every single penny of Imogen's $224,000 college fund last year to save your brother's marriage. She won't need it anyway. Girls like her don't go to real colleges. She can work at a coffee shop like she deserves." My mother clapped the loudest, smiling proudly. The whole table burst into laughter. My father looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You've always been the extra useless one in this family anyway. Deal with it." I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I simply reached into my bag, pulled out the thick envelope my grandfather had mailed me 18 days earlier, and slid it across the table right in front of him. What my father didn't know was that tonight, the daughter he just publicly humiliated would make him regret every single word. Welcome back to Revenge Episodes. Get comfortable. Grab your coffee. The people in this story had every chance to do the right thing. They chose not to. Drop a comment and subscribe. You're going to love what happens next. Let me take you back to the year my brother became, in my parents' eyes, the only child they had ever really wanted. And the year I quietly began to keep records. In our living room in Buckhead, on the long wall above the leather sofa, there are 14 framed photographs. I counted them when I was 11, the way some children count Christmas lights. 11 of those photographs are of my brother Pearson. 2 are family photos taken at events Pearson was the center of. The 14th, the smallest, is of me at 4, holding a stuffed rabbit my grandfather had sent from Savannah for my birthday. The frame is the kind you buy in a multi-pack at HomeGoods. I once heard my mother explain it to a guest at our dining room table. She had not noticed I was sitting on the stairs. "Pearson photographs better," she said. "Imogen's more of a candid kid." I was 11 years old. I made a note in my head. The number 11 became important much later. I would not be the one who learned to count it. My father, Whitfield Warren II, is an M&A partner at Holloway, Drummond and Ash, a 30-year-old firm with floors on Peachtree Street. He bills out at over $1,000 an hour. He has not lost an argument at home in 20 years. My mother, Henrietta, graduated from Emory Law in 1995. She worked 2 years as a corporate associate at Sutherland Asbill before my brother was born in 1997. She never went back. She did not renew her bar membership after 2002. When I was 14 and asked her about a question from my school debate club, she smiled and said, "Honey, you don't need to know any of that. Your brother handles the legal in this family." That was the sentence I remembered. I would, much later, watch her stop breathing in a single moment because of one word on one piece of paper. She had not let herself forget a thing. In December of 2025, I came home from school with a letter in my backpack. Georgetown's School of Foreign Service had accepted me through early decision. I had applied without telling my father. I waited until dinner to set the envelope, still sealed, beside his plate. He read it standing up. "Foreign Service," he said. "That's a LibArts hobby, sweetheart. You'll be back here applying to UGA in 2 years." My mother laughed gently, as if he had told a small, charming joke. He set the letter back down on the table the way you might set down a child's drawing. He did not ask what Foreign Service was. He did not ask if I had told my college counselor. He did not ask if my grandfather knew. He had a partner's call in 15 minutes, and his bourbon was getting warm. I put the letter into a burgundy file folder I had bought at Eagle Eye Bookshop in Decatur the summer before, and I labeled it number 17. I had labeled 16 others. None of them were things I had ever shown my parents. The only adult in my family who ever told me the truth was my grandfather. We called him Henry, because that was his middle name, and because that was the name he had used with my grandmother for 58 years. He is 80, He lives alone in a Greek revival on East Gaston Street in Savannah, with a library of about 3,800 books and a leather chair so worn the seams have given way at the right armrest. He spent 31 years as an assistant United States attorney for the Northern District of Georgia before retiring in 2010 and opening a small trust and estate practice from a study in his house. His wife, my grandmother Eleanor, died of a stroke in June of 2019. I visited him every Thanksgiving and for 6 weeks every summer from the year I was 14. He always remembered what I was reading. He always asked for the title, the author, and the reason. My father once told a dinner guest that my grandfather was sentimental about books. I would understand eventually that my grandfather was sentimental about evidence. In my house, recognition wasn't given, it was assigned. And from the day I was born, mine had been assigned to someone else. By the time I was 7, I had figured out the seating arrangements. Pearson sat on my father's right. I sat at the corner. By the time I was 9, I had figured out the camera arrangements at family events. Pearson was always centered. I was always cropped or absent. By the time I was 11, I had figured out the dollar arrangements. When something needed money, the money went to Pearson. When something needed apology, the apology was owed to Pearson. In the spring of 2017, I made the U10 DeKalb County soccer final on a Saturday in late April. I was 9 years old. I had been the starting forward all season. My team was up against a club from Tucker that had beaten us twice. The final was at 4. The same Saturday, Pearson, who was a senior at UGA in Athens, had an intramural recreational league game that started at 5. My parents chose the intramural game. My mother's best friend's husband drove me to the field in his Honda Pilot. He brought a folding chair and a thermos of coffee. He clapped politely when I scored the equalizer. We won 2-1. The trophy was small, made of stamped brass and engraved U10 DeKalb County Champions 2017. I held it on my lap the whole drive home. My mother called from Athens that night. "How did it go, sweetheart?" "Wait, Pearson, tell me about your goal first." "The trophy is still in my old bedroom. It sits on the shelf above my desk. The wall in our living room has 11 of Pearson's. I did not move mine downstairs. I do not know whether I was protecting it, or whether I had already understood that downstairs was not mine. In the fall of 2021, when I was 13, my parents took me to dinner at the home of family friends, the Whitlocks, in Sandy Springs. The conversation drifted to my brother's upcoming wedding. Mrs. Whitlock turned to me across the candles and asked, with the soft warmth of a woman who liked children, "And Imogen, are you the maid of honor?" My father laughed. "Imogen? She's the spare. We brought her along for the ride." The table laughed with him. I was 13 years old, eating salmon on a Lennox plate, looking at a tall red taper candle in a brass holder. I did not cry. I asked Mrs. Whitlock about the candle. She told me her mother had brought it back from Vienna in 1979. That was the first time I heard the word spare. It would not be the last. In the early summer of 2019, my brother, then 22 and home for a long weekend from his last year of law school at Vanderbilt, wrecked my father's Lexus IS 350 against a curb in Athens after coming out of a bar. No one called the police. My father drove down at 6 in the morning, paid a body shop owner he knew to take the car off the street, and had it fixed quietly over 3 weeks. The invoice was $18,000. Pearson did not pay a cent. I know the number because I found the invoice in the drawer of my father's study when I was 14 and looking for a pen. That same summer, I asked my mother for $400 to attend a science camp at Georgia Tech. She told me, "Honey, we just had a big expense. Next year." There was never a next year. I never asked again. I memorized the number on the invoice. I did not know why. I just knew that someday it might matter. My middle school promotion was in May of 2022. I had won the school's writing award for an essay on Rachel Carson. My mother could not attend. She was in Charleston with my brother, watching him be installed as an associate at the firm's Charleston satellite office. My father came for 22 minutes, took a phone call halfway through, and left. My grandfather drove 3 hours and 45 minutes from Savannah to be there. He stayed at our house for 4 days. He took me to Eagle Eye Bookshop in Decatur on the second day and bought me 6 books. I still have all 6. 2 of them were about trust law. 1 was about forensic accounting. The other 3 were fiction. He paid in cash from a money clip my grandmother had given him for his 50th birthday. In the parking lot, he handed me the bag and said, "You'll need these. People who keep records never run out of company." At 14, I thought he was being eccentric. He was, in fact, building a foundation. In the summer of 2024, when I was 16, I spent 6 weeks at his house. One afternoon, he sat me down in his library and showed me a black moleskin notebook he had used during his early years as a federal prosecutor. It was a list: cases by date, witnesses by initial, amounts, counter-evidence, times of phone calls. He flipped through it slowly, without explanation. He did not tell me he had stopped using one for years. He only said, "You don't have to do anything with what you see, but you should always see it accurately." I bought the same notebook at Eagle Eye the next time I was home. I wrote my first entry on June 22, 2024. By April of 2026, I would be on page 71. My grandfather, on the same day I bought mine, bought a new one of his own. He had reasons to start again. I did not know them yet. By the time I turned 17, I had stopped being surprised. That was the year I started filling a notebook with names, dates, and dollar amounts. My brother met Adelaide Caldwell at a friend's wedding in Charleston in the summer of 2019. He was 22 and entering his last year of law school. She was 21 and finishing her undergraduate at Emory. She came from a Charleston family with 4 generations of family physicians and a house on Trad Street that had been built before the Civil War. She had a quiet voice and noticeably long hands. By her own account, she was, that night, more interested in the bourbon than in my brother. He, by his account, was the opposite. They married in June of 2021 at Magnolia Plantation, in the kind of 3-day weekend my mother had been planning since the day they met. I was 13. I was the junior bridesmaid. I wore a dusty blue dress that was too long for me and that I caught on a nail during the reception. I spent most of the reception sitting on the back steps with my book. Adelaide found me there with 2 glasses of champagne in her hands. She gave one to her own bridesmaid who walked past, sat down beside me, and asked, "You're reading on the steps? Show me the book. I'll judge it from the cover." I gave her the book. It was The Remains of the Day. She nodded. "Good cover," she said. "Better book. I'll let you get back to it." She stood up, straightened her dress, and walked back inside. I did not know yet that she was the second adult who would actually see me. She was already looking. Adelaide started her emergency medicine residency at Emory University Hospital in July of 2024. By November of that year, she was 4 months into her first year. She came home one weeknight after a 12-hour shift to find a thick envelope in the day's mail from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Georgia. It was an explanation of benefits, 4 pages long. The claim was for an inpatient cardiac evaluation at a hospital in Florida she had never set foot in. The amount was $129,500. The patient name was Adelaide W. Caldwell. She had been Adelaide W. Warren for 3.5 years. She called BCBS the next morning, sitting in her car outside Emory before her shift. The representative confirmed the claim had been approved the week before. It had been submitted under the family plan by her husband, the policyholder. The payment had gone to a provider named Caldwell Health Holdings, registered with the Florida Division of Corporations in September 2024. Adelaide is a doctor. She knew what evidence looked like. She did not confront him that night. In March of 2025, she filed for divorce at the Fulton County Superior Courthouse on Pryor Street. Her attorney was a young lawyer named Marlo Ashbridge, whom my father knew through the Atlanta Bar Association. My father knew about the filing within 48 hours. He called Adelaide and asked her to come to his office at Holloway, Drummond and Ash. He closed the door. He did not raise his voice. He never did. He offered her a settlement. The family would wire $90,000 into Marlo Ashbridge's IOLTA account. My brother would, quote, see a counselor, and the divorce would be withdrawn. Adelaide accepted. She also asked for one additional term. She would retain a complete copy of every document relating to the insurance claim, every page, every screenshot, every email metadata header, in a safety deposit box at the SunTrust branch on Peachtree at Habersham. The box was opened in her maiden name, Caldwell. She would have the right to redeploy that file at any time, for any reason, without my father's knowledge or consent. My father agreed. He thought he had bought a wife's silence for $90,000. He had actually bought a doctor's patience. Adelaide withdrew the divorce on March 19, 2025. My brother did not go to counseling. He flew to Cabo with 2 college friends the following week. Adelaide returned to her residency. By July, she was a second year. She continued to live in the townhouse in Brookhaven. She continued to take Pearson's last name on insurance forms. She continued to add to the safety deposit box. In July of 2025, she and I had dinner at Bacchanalia in Atlanta. She did not mention the divorce. She asked instead, "Are your grandfather and you still trading book recommendations?" I said we were. She nodded and ordered another glass of wine. I would not realize until much later that she had not been asking about books. She had been asking whether I had a witness. Adelaide did not divorce my brother in March of 2025. She paused. There is a difference. At 9:52 in the evening on July 28, 2025, my brother received an email from his wife. It contained one sentence and a blank signature line. I will be refiling on August 15th. I will be naming the LLC. I will be naming Florida. He was sitting at his desk on the 31st floor of his building on Peachtree Street, working late on a deal sheet for a manufacturing client. He read the email twice. Then he picked up his cell phone and called my father. The call lasted 52 minutes. I would later see the duration on the cell phone bill that my grandfather's forensic accountant pulled from carrier records. "Dad, she'll burn the firm down," my brother said. "She'll burn me. She'll burn you." My father did not panic. He had a plan within the hour. The plan required someone else to bleed. The Imogen Warren Education Trust had been set up by my grandfather when I was 5. He had funded it gradually for 12 years, with annual contributions and modest market growth, until by the summer of 2025, the trust held $224,000. The trust deed was simple. The trustee was my father. The beneficiary was me. The distributions were permitted only for qualified higher education expenses. The trustee, the deed specified in plain English, was bound by fiduciary duty to act for the benefit of the beneficiary. In 2013, when my grandfather drafted that trust, he still trusted his son. He told me, years later, that the regret was not in setting up the trust. The regret was in the trustee designation. On the afternoon of August 5, 2025, my father called the institutional trust desk at Charles Schwab. The wire officer he spoke to was a man named Hadley Pierce, who logged the call and who would, 6 months later, sit in front of my grandfather's forensic accountant and confirm exactly what he had heard. My father instructed Schwab to initiate 2 wires from the trust. The first was for $90,000 to the IOLTA account of Marlo Ashbridge, Adelaide's divorce attorney. The second was for $134,000 to a personal Bank of America checking account in my father's name. The memo line, dictated by my father, read, "Qualified higher education expenses, pre-matriculation planning." I was 16 years old. I had not been consulted. I had not signed anything. I was, at that moment, sitting on the front porch of my grandfather's house in Savannah, reading The Magic Mountain in a wicker chair. The book had been on my grandfather's reading list. I was 3 weeks into a 6-week summer visit. I had no idea the wire had happened. Neither did my grandfather. Not yet. Hadley Pierce, the trust officer, asked one routine question. "Is this beneficiary directed?" My father said, "Pre-matriculation planning. Beneficiary's representative directing. Send it through." He told the trust desk it was pre-matriculation planning. I had not started matriculating anything. The $134,000 my father kept for himself moved into his personal Bank of America account in 3 separate transfers over the following 90 days. $46,000, $44,000, $44,000. Each transfer was below the threshold at which Schwab's compliance department automatically flagged fiduciary to personal movements for internal review. He was an M&A attorney. He had read the institutional disclosures. He had read them recently. The money was used for 3 things. $80,000 paid off 3 of my brother's credit cards, a Chase Sapphire Reserve, an American Express Platinum, and a Bank of America Premium Rewards. $30,000 covered his shortfall to the Internal Revenue Service and the Georgia Department of Revenue for his estimated quarterly taxes for 2024, which he had failed to file on time and on which he had accrued penalties. The remaining $24,000 bought a Patek Philippe Calatrava, a pre-owned model from the late 1990s, at Tourneau on Peachtree. My father wore the watch to Christmas dinner that year. He posted a photograph in the family group chat with the caption, "New piece. Earned this one." No one replied. My grandfather noticed the watch. He did not say a word at the table. He did not need to. That night, the 5th of August 2025, I was at my grandfather's. I came home the next afternoon. My parents had hosted a small barbecue. Pearson and Adelaide were there. Adelaide did not look at my father once. I went up to my bedroom around 9. I heard my parents talking in the kitchen as I came back down for a glass of water. I stopped on the 3rd step from the bottom. "It's handled," my father said. My mother answered with the smallest sound a former corporate lawyer could make. It was not a word. It was an exhalation. I went back up the stairs. I sat on my bed. I opened my notebook to page 38 and wrote, in my plain block printing, 3 lines. August 5th. Dad. It's handled. Mom. Nothing. 9:52 p.m. 3 words. With a timestamp. I had no idea yet what they would unlock 7 months later. The quarterly statement arrived in Savannah on the 9th of September 2025. It came in a standard Charles Schwab envelope, addressed to the settlor of the trust at his home address. My grandfather had received those envelopes every 3 months for 12 years. He had read every one. He read this one at his kitchen table with his Le Creuset kettle on the burner and a half cup of coffee already poured. The trust balance was $0.00. He folded the statement closed. He put it in the second drawer of his kitchen island. He pulled the kettle off the heat before it whistled. He did not call anyone. The whistle would have woken Eleanor. Eleanor had been gone 6 years. He poured a second cup of coffee. He said one word out loud to no one. He said, "Well." Then he went to his study and started a list. The list became a notebook. The notebook became a case. On the 18th of September, my grandfather drove 3 hours and 45 minutes from Savannah to Atlanta. He did not tell my father he was coming. He did not stop at our house. He went directly to a building on Peachtree Street and rode the elevator to the 18th floor. The office he entered belonged to a man named Garrett Vance. Garrett Vance is a forensic accountant. He spent 22 years with the Internal Revenue Service Criminal Investigation Division before going into private practice. My grandfather had worked with him on 4 federal prosecutions during his time as an assistant U.S. attorney. They had not seen each other in 11 years. My grandfather brought a craft envelope and laid it on the desk. Garrett read its contents in 22 minutes. When he looked up, he said, "You want a wire trail? You want intent? You want the email?" My grandfather said, "All 3, and a clean chain of custody." Garrett charged $875 an hour. My grandfather wrote the retainer check for $50,000 from his personal account at Truist Wealth. He had budgeted, he said later, for 14 months. It took 5. In November of 2025, Garrett tracked down a paralegal who had been let go from Holloway, Drummond, and Ash earlier that year. Her name was Maris Lockhart. She had worked at the firm for 6 years and was, according to 2 former colleagues, a person with an unusually precise memory and an unusually low tolerance for nonsense. She had been terminated in June, 4 weeks after asking a question in an internal meeting about a wire request she had been asked to handle. Maris taught paralegal certification classes in the evenings at Georgia State's Extension campus in downtown Atlanta. She lived in Decatur with her partner and a Belgian Malinois named Murphy. She agreed to provide a sworn declaration in exchange for the cost of her attorney's review and a promise that her name would be kept out of any internal firm communications she had not initiated. The declaration was 4 pages long. It was notarized in Cobb County on December 14, 2025. On August 4, 2025, the declaration read, "I overheard Mr. Warren II instruct the trust officer at Charles Schwab to characterize the wire as pre-matriculation planning, beneficiary's representative directing. To my knowledge, the beneficiary, Imogen Warren, age 16 at the time, was not consulted, did not provide instruction, and was not represented by counsel. Mr. Warren II's direct supervisor at the firm was not informed of the transaction." Maris had been waiting for someone to ask. She had not been waiting long. The email arrived later. It was a single message from my father's firm address, sent at 5:22 in the evening on August 5, 2025, to Marlo Ashbridge, the attorney who had represented Adelaide in her first divorce filing. The subject line was simply, RRE. Caldwell Matter. The body was 3 sentences. Per our prior discussion, wire of $90,000 initiated this afternoon to your IOLTA. This should keep her quiet through the holidays at minimum. Wit. My grandfather did not obtain the email through a subpoena to the firm. The firm would have moved heaven and earth to suppress it. He obtained it the only legitimate way available. When Adelaide refiled her divorce in March of 2026, that email, sent between my father and her own counsel, was part of the discovery she was entitled to demand. Her new attorney handed it across the table. That single sentence was admissible. It was also fatal. By February of 2026, the package was finished. It contained 5 things: Garrett's forensic wire trail and reconstruction of the structuring pattern, the email obtained through Adelaide's discovery, Maurice's declaration, the trust deed with the violation language highlighted in yellow, and a transcript of the Schwab Trust desk call between Hadley Pierce and my father. My grandfather sat with his attorney, Cordelia Pelletier, at the small Pelletier Law Office on Bull Street in Savannah. They had known each other for 30 years. She had argued 2 cases against him when he was still at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and 3 with him after he had left it. They were the kind of friends who did not need to like each other to trust each other. They chose the filing date together. It would be Friday, April 3, 2026. The day before my 18th birthday dinner. "We file the day before," my grandfather said. She doesn't carry it into dinner. The dinner finishes it for us. If you've followed the story this far, please take a second to subscribe before what comes next. And if you've ever had a quiet relative who saw the truth before anyone else, leave one word in the comments, the first thing they noticed. Or the last. I read every reply. My grandfather had been a federal prosecutor for 31 years. He had never built a case against his own son. He built this one the same way he built the others. Slowly. With paper. On the 12th of February 2026, I was sitting at the kitchen table in our house in Buckhead, eating roasted salmon and rice with my mother. Pearson and Adelaide were not at our house that night. They almost never were anymore. At 7 minutes past 7, my phone buzzed. The text was from Adelaide. Free Saturday? I want to talk about Vanderbilt versus Georgetown, not about your brother. I had been admitted to Vanderbilt as well. I had told no one except my grandfather and my college counselor. My mother glanced over at the phone. She asked me who it was. I said a friend. That was the first time I lied to her with intention. I made another small note. The first lie of intention. On the 14th of February, a Saturday, I took the train from school to Ponce City Market. Adelaide arrived 10 minutes after I did, still wearing scrubs under a navy peacoat. She had come from a 12-hour shift. She looked tired the way doctors look tired, which is to say, not tired at all on the outside, only inside the eyes. We ate ramen at Botiwala. She talked about Georgetown for 8 minutes and about Vanderbilt for 6. She had considered both for medical school. She had picked Vanderbilt because she had liked the river. She asked what I planned to study at Georgetown. I told her foreign service. She nodded. My grandfather would have liked that, she said. He worked for the State Department in the 70s. She did not say her grandfather's name. I did not ask. At the end of the meal, she put a small object on the table next to the napkin holder. It was a Samsung Bar Plus thumb drive, 64 gigabytes, in titanium. It made a small, clean sound against the laminate. This is a backup, she said. Of a backup. Of a file your brother does not know I have. I picked it up. I put it in my coat pocket. She did not tell me what was on the drive. She told me when to open it. Not until your grandfather tells you to, she said. Don't open it on your own. Don't open it at home. If you ever need it, your grandfather will tell you. She paid the check, $34.80 on Apple Pay. She stood up to leave. She picked up her tote bag. She held her phone up to her face to unlock it. The home screen was a photo of a pediatric stuffed bear in a paper hospital gown. Before she walked away, she said one more sentence. It was the sentence I would think about every day for the next 26 days. Your grandfather and I have not met. We share one contact. Her name is Cordelia. When she calls you in March, answer. She walked out of the food hall and toward the East Side Beltline parking garage. I sat at the table for another 11 minutes. I did not open the drive. I did not know who Cordelia was. I would, in 26 days. On the 11th of March, at 6 minutes past 6 in the evening, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a Savannah landline. It was my grandfather. The call lasted 6 minutes and 22 seconds. How's school? He said, the way he always did, as a statement and not a question. I told him about my Latin teacher. He told me about a book he was reading. He asked if I had read it. I had not. He asked if I would like to. I would. He never let his phone calls feel like business. Then, at the very end, he said, Are you free the weekend of April 4th? Saturday in particular. Don't book it. Stay flexible. I said I had nothing planned. Good, he said. And Imogen, do you still write things down? I said I did. Good, he said. Same notebook? I said it was. He said the word excellent quietly, the way he said things he did not want anyone to overhear. He told me he loved me. He hung up. He had never asked me to keep a Saturday flexible before. He had also never warned me that my birthday dinner would not be the only event of the month. The envelope arrived on the 17th of March, a Tuesday, by FedEx Express Saver. The front office of the Westminster Schools paged me out of fourth period AP English to sign for it. The clerk, a woman who had known me since I was 12, looked at the sender's address, a law office on Bull Street in Savannah, and said nothing. I took the envelope back to the dorm in my backpack. I did not open it on the bus. I did not open it in the parking lot. I drove home, told my mother I had a headache, locked my bedroom door, sat down at my desk, and opened it. The envelope was thick. It contained 4 things. There was a single page from a bank statement at Charles Schwab. The account was named the Imogen Warren Education Trust, Series 2. The settlor and trustee were listed as Whitfield Warren I. The beneficiary was Imogen Warren. The balance, as of the prior statement closing date, was $487,200. There was a copy of the trust deed cover page with the violation language for fiduciary duty highlighted in soft yellow. There was a small business card printed on cream linen stock that read, Cordelia Pelletier, Pelletier Law, LLC, Bull Street, Savannah, Georgia. On the back, in my grandfather's small block printing, were 5 words, call after dinner, not before. And there was a single piece of paper, folded once, with 1 handwritten line. By the time your father reads this, my attorney will have already filed. Just be at dinner. Henry. I read the line twice. I did not understand what filed meant. I trusted that I would, in time. I put the 4 items back into the envelope. I put the envelope into the bottom drawer of my desk under the notebook. I made a note on page 70 of the notebook. The note said, envelope from Henry, 4 pages. Trust 2. Lawyer, will call after dinner. I did not open the envelope again until I was 18. The RSVPs were already on the kitchen counter. My mother had sent the invitations the 3rd week of February. 32 of our relatives had accepted, 4 of my father's sisters, 3 of my mother's siblings, 14 cousins, 6 spouses, 2 second cousins. The dinner would be in our dining room in Buckhead, catered by the small house catering company my mother had used for everything from baby showers to retirement parties for the last 10 years. My grandfather had RSVP'd no. His letter on Pelletier Law letterhead had arrived 3 days earlier. The note inside read, a long drive at my age. Imogen, I love you. Henry. My mother read the note aloud at brunch the Sunday before the dinner. She said, he's 80, not 95. He drove up for Pearson's wedding. She put the note on the stack of mail by the front door. The stack would still be there when I came down on the morning of the 5th of April. She would no longer be the one filing it. My father, that same week, had dinner with my brother at the Capital City Club. Garrett Vance later subpoenaed the membership swipe records. The 2 of them entered the bar at 7:30 in the evening on Friday, March 27th. They left at 9:14. The bill was for 2 old fashions, a ribeye, a wedge salad, and a single port. $186 on my father's house account. You sure she won't make a thing of it? My brother asked. My father laughed. Imogen? She's a quiet kid. She'll process it for a year and write a Georgetown application essay about it. We'll be fine. Coffee shop money for the next 4 years. My father said coffee shop for the first time that night. It would not be the last time. It would not even be the last time that week. On the morning of the 4th of April, I came downstairs at 7 minutes past 7. I made myself a fig yogurt with honey. My mother walked into the kitchen, kissed the top of my head, the first time in 11 months she had kissed me without prompting, and said, Big day, sweetheart. Caterers come at 4. She was holding her phone. She kept opening her email and closing it. There was no message from my grandfather. No call. No card. "He must be tired," she said. "He's 80. She turned the phone face down on the marble. She poured a cup of coffee. 43 minutes later, she turned the phone over, looked, and turned it face down again. She would do it a third time at noon and would stop after that. My mother knew something was off. She did not yet know what. By that hour, my father had already received an email he had not opened. The first guests arrived at 6:43. My Aunt Beverly Warren Hollis, my father's older sister, 58 years old, divorced since 2008, a real estate broker on the north side of Atlanta, arrived first with a bottle of Domaine Carnero sparkling. She kissed my cheek and said, 18, and Georgetown. Your father must be insufferable about it. I did not say anything. He had not mentioned it once. The seating chart had me between my Aunt Beverly and my cousin Hadley, who was 16 and had been my closest cousin since we were both small. My brother and Adelaide were placed 5 seats away from me on the long side of the table. They arrived 12 minutes late. Adelaide did not look at me for long. She gave me a small nod across the room. It was the size of a thumbnail. I made a note in my mind about it. My father checked the level of his champagne 3 separate times in 15 minutes. My mother coordinated the catering team without raising her voice. Trays of crab cake appetizers moved between rooms. Someone laughed too loud at something. A second cousin asked if I was excited. At 7:52, my father stood up. He tapped the side of his champagne flute with a spoon. The room went quiet. He smiled. He had a real smile, my father, when he wanted one. The kind you could see his teeth in. Imogen, he said, you've been the easy one, the quiet one, the one we never had to worry about. My mother put her hand on his forearm. The gesture was deliberate. It was not the hand of a wife steadying a husband. It was the hand of a woman who had reviewed the toast in advance and was signaling her approval. I had not noticed her review it. I would, in retrospect, remember that she had been in the study with him the previous Sunday afternoon for over an hour. My father lifted his glass an inch higher. This past year, he said, your mother and I made a decision. One you weren't part of, because we are still your parents. He paused. He let the table feel the pause. He was setting it up like a gift. I was already reaching into my bag. We drained every single penny of Imogen's $224,000 college fund last year, my father said, to save your brother's marriage. She won't need it anyway. Girls like her don't go to real colleges. She can work at a coffee shop like she deserves. One of my aunts swallowed audibly. My Uncle Theodore, who had retired the year before, put his fork down on the white linen. Pearson stared at his salad plate. Adelaide sat very still with her hands folded in her lap. My cousin Hadley made a small sound that was not laughter. My mother clapped, loud, proud. The table broke into laughter. It was uneven. Some of it was real. Some of it was thin. Some of the relatives at that table laughed in the way people laugh when they are not sure what else to do with their faces in public. I counted 6 who did not laugh at all. Hadley, Aunt Beverly, Uncle Theodore, my second cousin Eliza, Adelaide, and one of my mother's older cousins, a woman named Lillian, who had once told me, when I was 9, that I had my grandmother's eyes. The clapping lasted 11 seconds. I counted them in my head, the way a metronome counts a measure. 11. The same as the number of photographs on the living room wall. My father set his glass down. He looked at me. You've always been the extra useless one in this family anyway, he said. Deal with it. My mother smiled. My father waited for me to cry. I waited for the laughter to settle. We were waiting for different things. I reached into the small leather satchel at my feet and took out the FedEx envelope. The thick one. I had opened it on the night it had arrived. I had read every page. I had memorized the trust deed cover. I had committed Cordelia Pelletier's name to my mind. I had refolded everything carefully. The handwritten note was still paperclipped to the back of the bank statement. The business card was still in the inside pocket. I stood up. I walked, slowly, 4 chairs along the side of the table. I did not look at my mother. I did not look at my brother. I did not look at the room. I set the envelope down beside my father's main plate. The bank statement faced up. "Open it, Dad," I said. "It's addressed personally." I walked back to my seat. I did not sit down. I remained standing. My mother's hands had stopped moving. Her glass of champagne was at a slight angle in her right hand, a few drops away from spilling. My father looked at the envelope. He looked at me. He looked at the room. He did not pick it up right away. He looked, for the first time in my life, like a man who was not sure of his next sentence. A second passed, then another. Aunt Beverly cleared her throat. Hadley folded her napkin in her lap and refolded it. Pearson did not look up. My father reached out. His hand was not shaking, but it was slower than he intended. He picked up the envelope. He pulled out the bank statement. He read the first line. He read the second line. He read the balance. He stopped on the balance. He read it again. He turned the page over and unfolded the small handwritten note that had been paperclipped to the back. He read 9 words. He set the note back down on the table the way you might set down a porcelain plate, carefully, with both hands, as if it might break. My father went pale. Not stage pale. The kind of pale that does not have a sentence yet. The note read, "By the time your father reads this, my attorney will have already filed. Just be at dinner. Henry?" The clock on the sideboard said 8 minutes past 8. My father set the note down. He set the bank statement down beside it. The statement was for an account he did not recognize. The Imogen Warren Education Trust, Series 2. Settlor and trustee, Whitfield Warren I. Beneficiary, Imogen Warren. Balance, $487,200. The first trust was empty. He had emptied it. The second trust was full. He had never been told it existed. It took him 5 seconds to understand the math of his life. It took my mother 3. She leaned over and read the statement over his shoulder. She did not need it to be explained to her. She knew what filed meant. She knew what Henry meant. She knew what a second trust with her father-in-law as both settlor and trustee meant when she had just 2 minutes earlier clapped for the announcement of the theft of the first. She set her glass of champagne down on the table. The base hit the linen with a small dry sound. She did not say a single complete word. She made one small sound, halfway between a breath and a name. It was, I believe, the word wit. It had no question mark and no exclamation point. She did not say anything else for 40 minutes. She did not look at me again that night. Not once. I do not know whether she could. The doorbell rang at 8 minutes past 9. The caterers were not expecting anyone. The youngest member of the catering team, a young woman in a black apron, went to the front door and opened it. She came back into the dining room with the slight breath of someone who has not been trained on what to do next. "Mr. Warren," she said, "there's a woman at the door who says she has a delivery for you." My father looked at her. He did not move. Aunt Beverly stood up. Aunt Beverly had been a real estate broker in Atlanta for over 20 years. She knew an answer when an answer was required. "I'll get the door, Whit," she said. "You stay seated." He did not. He stood up. He walked to the front of the house. The dining room watched him go. I watched him go. I heard a woman's voice in the foyer. It was professional. It was not warm. It was not cold. It was the precise voice of a person who had timed every word in advance. "Is Mr. Warren II available? I'm sorry for the timing. There's been a filing he should see." There was a pause. "It was filed yesterday, Friday afternoon. I'm here for the courtesy copy." The woman walked into the dining room. She was 61 years old, in a navy vest, with a Toomey briefcase in her left hand. Two associates in dark suits stood behind her. She did not need to introduce herself. Adelaide had said one name to me at Ponce City Market on Valentine's Day. Her name is Cordelia. When she calls you in March, answer. Cordelia Pelletier had a face, a briefcase, a folder with my father's name on the tab. Mr. Warren II, she said, I'd like to step into your study for 2 minutes. My father, who had not lost an argument at home in 20 years, did not argue. He led her to the study. The two associates followed. Aunt Beverly closed the dining room door behind them halfway, with a glance toward me that said in plainer English than I could have asked for, "You are not in trouble. Whatever is happening to him, you are not in trouble." I waited. Cordelia returned to the dining room 5 minutes later with my father, who had 3 thin craft folders in his hands. He did not sit. He stood beside her at the head of the table. She placed the folders on the linen in front of him, one beside the other. "Mr. Warren," she said, in a voice everyone in the room could hear without effort, "the petition for removal of trustee was filed yesterday afternoon in Fulton County Probate Court. The civil complaint was filed at the same time. The third folder contains a grievance complaint with the State Bar of Georgia, including exhibits. You have 20 days to respond to numbers 1 and 2. The bar matter is separate." My father did not say a single word. "Ms. Caldwell's attorney will be in touch through proper channels regarding her own filings," Cordelia added. "Good evening." Adelaide raised her head for the first time that night. She looked, for the second time only, directly at my brother. Pearson looked at his salad plate. He set his fork down. He did not pick it up again. If you've made it this far without yelling at the screen, you've earned the second half of this story. Before I tell you what I packed into a single suitcase and what my grandfather said when I drove down to Savannah, leave one word in the comments. Just the word for the silence after the clapping stops. I read every one. Stay with me. Cordelia Pelletier left at 9:20. She did not say goodnight. The two associates followed her out, neither of them looking at any of the relatives in the dining room. My father did not return to the head of the table. He walked into his study and closed the door. My mother stayed in her seat. She did not eat. She did not pour another glass of champagne. She held the rim of her glass between 2 fingers and did not move it. Pearson rose at 9:36. He gathered his coat. He kissed Adelaide on the cheek. She turned her face 2 inches to the left. He left through the front door without saying goodbye to anyone. The relatives began to drift out one by one. My mother stood by the door. She thanked them mechanically. They thanked her mechanically. The catering team began to clear plates. Aunt Beverly was the last to leave. She held me by both shoulders, for longer than was usual, and pressed her mouth close to my ear. "Your grandfather raised one good lawyer in this family," she said. "It wasn't your father." I went upstairs. I packed 1 suitcase. I did not pack the trophy. On the morning of the 13th of April, my grandfather drove 3 hours and 45 minutes from Savannah and pulled into our driveway in a 2018 Lincoln Continental in slate gray. He did not get out of the car. He waited. I came down the stairs with a navy Samsonite and a brown leather tote. The notebook was in the tote. The thumb drive Adelaide had given me was in the inside zip pocket. The original FedEx envelope was at the bottom. My mother stood at the kitchen counter with her hands flat on the marble. She did not move. She did not speak. My father did not come downstairs. I walked outside. I put the suitcase in the trunk. I got into the front seat. My grandfather looked at me for 1 second. "Notebook with you?" he said. "Always," I said. We drove south on I-75 and then east on I-16. He did not ask me how I was doing. He asked me what I had. That has always been his way of asking. For the next 3 weeks, I lived in his guest room above the library on East Gaston Street. I confirmed my Georgetown matriculation by email on the 28th of April. He opened a joint debit account with me at the Truist branch on Bull Street so that I would have access to the Trust 2 distributions for tuition and books. I read 3 of the books on his summer list. I wrote in my notebook every night. I did most of my writing at a small coffee shop on West Broughton Street called the Foundry Coffee Pub. The Foundry has wood tables and shelves of second-hand paperbacks and a barista who knows everyone's drink within 4 visits.